Happy January 6th, America! With hundreds of J6ers in prison to this day, it is a perfect day to explore some of the darker episodes of authoritarianism in American history. So arresting protesters and dissenters has unfortunately cropped up several times in American history, starting with our second president, John Adams, so immediately after Washington. Adams was the leader of the Authoritarian Federalist Party, which wanted more power for the government and less for the people. Adams passed the Alien and Sedition Acts, allegedly on fears of foreign influence. Back then it was the French. Hunter Biden did not have a Russian laptop yet. The act made it illegal to publish, quote, false, scandalous, and malicious writing against the government, so the 1700s version of misinformation. Once enacted, of course, the law was used against critics of the Adams regime, including critics of the war against France. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. Victims included several prominent journalists, a congressman from Vermont who criticized Adams in a letter to the editor, even a tavern keeper who said, quote, damn John Adams in a moment of drunkenness. The act was finally repealed by Thomas Jefferson, who also pardoned everybody convicted. Now, the next major episode of prosecuting dissent came, of course, with Abraham Lincoln. Millions of Northerners opposed the war. They figured just let the South go, the way we might just let California go. Lincoln was having none of it, and he suspended habeas corpus, giving him the power to arrest anybody for any reason. He used this and the related Military Commissions Act against tens of thousands of critics of the war, including the leader of the anti-war faction of his own party, as well as the Chicago Times, which was one of the biggest newspapers in the country. Incidentally, Lincoln also opened fire on Americans protesting the draft in New York and Baltimore, killing over 100. This all ended, of course, with John Wilkes Booth. Alas, it bounced back with Woodrow Wilson, who followed Lincoln's script using World War I to prosecute critics. Using the Espionage Act of 1917, which is still in effect, and the Sedition Act of 1918, Wilson prosecuted roughly 2,000 critics, including prominent politician Eugene Debs and anti-war activist Kate O'Hare, who got 5 years for saying it's not our war, which it was not. FDR, of course, did it again, conducting sedition trials throughout his war against journalists and poets, as well as using the IRS to go after political opponents, including newspapers. Throughout the 50s and 60s, presidents continued using the IRS as a private army to punish critics. This was an open secret until Nixon, when the media suddenly pretended to be shocked there is gambling going on in this establishment. Now, even Obama's IRS targeted organizations with Tea Party or Patriot in their name. We can only imagine what Joe Biden's handlers have been up to. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. The prosecution of thousands of J6ers will go down as one of the darker moments in American political history. Indeed, after they tried to convict the leading presidential candidate, it may go down as the darkest. Thankfully, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but the only way to stop it for good is repeal the laws and mechanisms that enable it. That includes surveillance of so-called misinformation like CISA or GEC, down to the IRS itself. These all, as long as they exist, stand as an open invitation to authoritarianism. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.